Good morning. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. Good morning. All right. Is there anyone doing 1 Million Cups here today? Yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Catherine Shoulders, and I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas. So.
Excellent. Which is Little Rock last week.
That'll teach you to raise your hand.
And Rear.
I'm Scott Jacobs. I'm a business owner and business advisor and an investor as well.
Excellent. Welcome, Scott. Anyone else?
Hi, David Coppich. I'm from Fort Collins. Moved here about 1.5 years ago and just come down to get a little bit more space, a little bit bigger than Fort Collins. So
Excellent.
Trying to meet some more people.
Well, I'm Jim Sears. Myself and Ian Kuliasha are the organizers of 1 Million Cup here in Boulder, and we love our audience. Today we have Mike Steely and Vocool. Very exciting to understand this new field of voice recognition, voice interaction. Because we've got an Amazon Echo too, and it's amazing how much we love that thing. So to start with, what's the design of the presentation?
This presentation, we've been bootstrapped since we began earlier in the year. This presentation is going to work. It's really more informational about voice and a little bit about what we're doing than the investor side. Though, I love input on crafting an investor pitch. So,
okay, so then it's somewhat informational, but what is your ask for the group, right?
Well, from an ask standpoint, based out of Little Rock, we're starting to grow and hire some folks there, but I'm really partially in Boulder this week, kind of scoping things out. What I want to do is meet as many people as I can because we don't have a lot of development talent that's just native, around the area, and so we'd like to open up a second shop here, and partially because I have a social media director back there / daughter, and so it's a great excuse to come. Boulder's an awesome place. So really connections into into the development community. I've been going around the co-working places, so I think I got covered. And then investors. So
Terrific.
yeah. All right.
We'll carry on.
Okay. So we got to start this thing off with Alexa doing something. Open Vocool.
Hi there. So, what would you like?
Launch the presentation.
It's an honor to be here today and get the chance to present to 1 Million Cups Boulder. Mike, you want to take it from here?
Thanks, Alexa. Yeah. So my name's Mike Steely, and with Vocool Technologies, and what we're going to do today is talk about this notion of conversational voice interactions and how that really impacts your business. So just a little bit about us. This is my co-founder over here on the left, Jake Stanley. I met him at our co-working facility there in Little Rock, which is one of these creative collisions. He spent about 5 years in the international coffee industry in Rwanda. He's a data expert over there. I started in the tech field before he was born at a company called Axiom Corporation. It was back in the 80s, and we were building a startup when we didn't know what a startup was and taking it to $1 billion. So I just want to get into the kind of the overall what is voice and where it sits. So the voice in the last 18 months has had some phenomenal growth, and almost 50 million devices are out there across the country now between Google and Amazon. Amazon's got basically a 4-to-1 ratio over Google at this point, and it's really the one that's driving this market. But what's interesting is predictions are that we're going to level off at about 50 million devices a year sold as cars come online, because cars are the next frontier for where this thing's going. So what are people doing with voice? And that's a question we get a lot as a voice application company. It's essentially what's on this list of the items here. Asking question number one is really validates what we found, which is this is simply a time savings for people. If you can get information that you need out of a platform quicker using Alexa, using Google versus using your phone, you know, you're going to go that route. And interestingly, Accenture just published a survey of about 2,200 folks last month, and 56% of these speaker owners said they now use their phones less for general search. That is the direction we're headed. I ultimately hope it's to the the computer on Star Trek, because that would be kind of cool. But so I really want to give you an idea, because it's such a broad industry. Our first product market fit as a startup has been local radio. So we've launched something to solve this problem that we have here, which is basically local radio has a huge disconnect for their audience. And we're using this really fancy graphic in the middle here. This literally is from one of Jake's high school textbooks to show that the communication channel for voice, or for radio, I'm sorry, has always been one-sided. I mean, this archaic thing reflects what's been happening since radio began. There is no feedback loop for us to figure out what the audience is doing on this side of the equation. So what we've done is built the Vocool conversation engine, and in this case, it's represented by the feedback loop. And we are enabling radio stations, again as our MVP, to allow them to pass data through, connect through an Alexa device. Radio has seen a resurgence because Alexa has come online. It's put them back in the home. The next thing they're again really excited about is they're tremendously excited about the possibilities of data interaction in a car as well. 90% of the revenue of radio comes in drive time hours, either in the morning or in the afternoon. And if we can take and now give control of content to the listener. So in other words, it's not just turn on and turn off, but it's taking chunks of data from the daily radio, let's say a talk show. 1037 is a sports show in Arkansas, as an example. And we can now make it searchable, so you can get in your car, you can walk into your house, and you can say, hey, Alexa, play me the Razorback report, right? Because everybody wants to be Hawk fans, right? Everybody needs to know that. And so by doing that, what that's giving, it's giving control of the content to the listener, but it's giving, more importantly, control of the data to the radio station. They now know what people are listening to. They now know who they are, because once we authenticate them into the system, we know all the demographic data that Facebook does. And so they can now, they can go from a zip code level to demographic pieces of information and start making decisions on how to best present information, present advertising to their audience. So, and we're just going to wrap up here because I really want to leave a lot of room for questions. But so this is where we are. This is where we said we launched in January. We've been doing professional services work, if you will, with startups to help them to voice enable their channels, and we can talk about those and demonstrate that a bit in Q&A. We took $50,000 in funding from the state of Arkansas. They have something there called the Technology Development Fund, which is a royalty-based agreement designed to just help somebody initiate a piece of technology. So that helped us get to where we are today with the conversation engine that we've launched. And that's essentially an AWS-based platform that is managing the data feeds and then pushing the information either through Alexa, Google, or wherever it needs to go. In the radio space, with our product market fit, we launched a service called Radio plus Alexa, which is a way for a radio station to sign up, and instead of paying, we've seen people pay $1,500 to connect their live stream account. It's a $49 a month subscription. So then we give them data control, advertising control from there. So, and where we're headed is basically the machine learning integration, voice to text, and building in the local ad network, and I'd love to get into that in the Q&A.
All right.
Yeah?
Ground rules, let us know who you are, a sentence about yourself as you ask questions. Yes?
Kelly Kimber, I'm building a startup that uses AI to build teams with there. The speech to text, naturalistic language programming is very much the thing that's what we're doing. How is this a problem for the receiver? I mean, the person on I'm in my car, my radio, and why do I want you to target ads more effectively?
Well, that's a really good question in terms of today and the way Facebook is, has been heading and all the things in the media. But what we found is once this device is at a home or this device, because you can now buy like most major manufacturers of cars are going to have this in their cars by 2019. But you can now buy with Garmin and some other devices, and we've been testing in the car. What you're doing is you're now making your information in the car interactive, and it's not just radio. There's 11,000 radio stations. We're going after that market first because 9,000 of those are independent, and we can easily penetrate to grow it out. But what you're giving the user is effectively complete and ultimate control over the information that they hear while they're driving. So and in doing so,
the ads.
the what?
I can.
Well, no. I'm sorry, not from an ad standpoint, but from the standpoint of the user, they're sitting in their car. A broadcast is just a broadcast, right? So it's just a one-way communication, and I get in, and it's point in time. Now I can treat my automobile as a search engine, essentially, because I'll be able to connect to radio, to podcasts, to local content sources, all sorts of information, and while driving, I can start to do those tasks better and better than I can today. I'd like to think Siri is going to, be able to help this as well, but Amazon and Google are really well ahead right now. So if you've ever used one of these devices, it's very, very good at the natural language processing. It's getting better all the time, and that's why in a car this is going to become, such an interesting opportunity.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm Maria, I'm the co-founder of a startup. I don't see how you can compete with Spotify and Pandora and things that are already integrated. I can very easily, for my cell phone, using Google Assistant, just launch whatever content I want on Spotify.
Yeah.
Right?
And again, our radio is our starting point, right? So we are expecting to, get a couple of hundred customers on in the next 60 days in this platform. And since you know the AI, what we're doing with this is by running this information through, we're learning more and more about what the preferences of those individuals are because we're using machine learning to make decisioning better there. Spotify allows you to, start a channel to play music. We're talking about really long term a different type of data because most radio stations are making their money during the drive time, and it's with a personality. It's with a person. It's with a local personality that you're interacting with, and you don't get basically. It's just a different product. So we're not really trying to compete with Spotify per se. We're trying to push different types of content and change the entire way that someone interacts with, what they're doing in a car.
So, Rick Lukash, angel investor. I'm going to ask what I think of this Ian's typical question, which is,
Yeah.
I was following you up until you got to, I thought I was following you up until you got to this slide, and now I'm really lost. What are you doing for whom and why are they paying you for it? Because you've got all these different things. What is Rafa? We bootstrapped today, right? So we
We've been experimenting in voice since last summer, just me and Jake, but we didn't launch the company until January. We were just reaching out to podcasts and you know, the Art of Charm, I mean, different folks, and just enabling their content to essentially see what would happen. This is such a new technology.
Okay, well, I would stop right there.
Yeah.
What does that mean? You're enabling their content.
So
Whose experience are you changing?
So we are changing the experience of the end user in terms of the way that they access information.
Okay, so.
Have you used an Alexa?
Yeah, I've got one at home,
Yeah.
but like, I have to confess, I'm using mostly these days at the time. But just stick with the podcast for a second.
Mhm.
So right now, if I want to listen to a podcast, I pull out whatever device I have handy, I call it the podcast, and I listen to it. That's the easy user. So what's going to change if your technology is different?
The way that you interact with that podcast is going to be different.
Okay, and how?
When you launch a podcast, and the ones I listen to, you know, James Altucher and Chen Ferris always does a really long form podcast, right? But even at a minimum, most podcasts are at least an hour long. What we're doing is, and this is really through the voice to text capabilities, we can take and we can chunk down that content, so by topic. So if you're thinking about a podcast and you sort it into individual topics within the podcast, we'll be able to take you directly to one of those topics, or if you're listening, while you're listening, you can pause the podcast and you can essentially tag it. So if there's something you want to remember, especially in these long podcasts, you know, Tim Ferriss does the best job I've seen of anybody with his podcast manually, and then he goes through literally second by second and lists topics and has links out to places to go. We're simply automating that feature through whatever the content is, radio, podcasts, yeah. Does that answer it enough?
No, but I'll let you.
I want to follow up on Rick. So I'm Ian, I'm a local VC finance and M&A attorney. To Rick's point, I was with you. And I want to get to Rick's point in a second, but in context. You spent a couple minutes sort of explaining who you guys were. I like that. You talked about the voice market in general. I like that. And then you launched into the problems with radio, which was a left turn for me. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm with you. I like this. But you missed nailing the problem.
All right.
You talked a little, like, I kind of got where you were going, but I was constantly waiting for you to turn a direction, you turned a different direction. So try to signal for me a little bit more. On that radio slide, radios have a huge problem. They can't parse and understand user interaction because they are send only. So that's their problem. They want some feedback on what the receiver is doing, what parts they're interacting with, so that they can more effectively compete with people like Apple and Amazon and everyone else who is parsing data digitally. They're not broadcasting it analog, and they can of course see. So that's the problem that radio people have.
Yes.
So nail that, because that's sort of missing. Like you kind of read it there,
Sure.
what you're saying, but like nail it.
So
Wait for it. And then the second part is sort of Rick's point related to this. Nail it for the receiver. What's changing for them? And you just went there, and I really like it. But I was guessing up until then. But the whole time I'm thinking, so he's doing what Apple Podcast does, where I can say, "Hey Google" or "Hey Siri, play the daily," and like. I don't listen to radio ever because I just listen to podcasts because they've already done that. But you answered it, which is we parse that even finer. Take what podcasts do now. We're doing that plus more for radio. We're doing minute by minute analysis of what's happening in the podcast so that users can interact with particular segments of a radio broadcast that they want, and they can ask for it with search.
Yes.
Now I get it, and now I'm really excited. But like. You gotta nail that early on, don't make people look for it.
No, it's perfect.
Let me just ask Ben Susan. So I'm missing one of the basic technical aspects of broadcast radio is a broadcast alone. And so it's not like parse data that you can select what comes to you. You'll get asynchronous feedback back to the radio station. So how is it working? You're sending asynchronous feedback to the radio station so they can program better?
So we are, our platform is built on AWS, and we're a beta partner with AWS, so we have access to a whole tool suite that isn't necessarily available yet to the public. But what we're doing is we run the analog through a text-to-speech conversion that allows us to turn it into digital data, basically. So we can then take, there's two ways this happens. The first stage at the moment is radio stations take their current, they record everything, right? So they take their current segment information. So there will be literally it's literally the raceback report, the recruiting report, it's, news segments, and they chunk it down to the point where they think it's a marketable segment, and then they pass it on to us. We make that conversion so it's now searchable information.
Okay, so let me just read back to you. So they have a podcast, you switched it to text it, you're able to search it. So after the podcast is done, you're able to use voice input to parse out what you're interested in.
Yes, and the next step of this, kind of phase 2 of where our company is going is because of the machine learning and the volume that we're starting to run through this, we can get to the point where we can automatically parse the data out based upon the machine learning. So the computer's doing it for us. So, and I can give you an example of one of the things that's up here, Talk Business. They're a politics show in Arkansas. It's a statewide politics show. Of course, a lot of people like to talk about politics. So we run their information through, and we can by topic, by candidate, by sentiment analysis, whatever it is, we can take and we can start to automatically chunk that data down so that someone can say, what did the governor say today? And we'll have that automatically pulls back up for them. So again, ultimately goes back to time savings. Yeah.
Susan Krause, a couple of startups, done a lot of product development. So what I'm trying to extrapolate from what you're saying, tell me if I'm wrong, is you talked about there's going to be speech in our cars.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to digitize these radio stations. Obviously, that doesn't allow us to search the radio station while we're sitting in the car. But right now in podcasts, obviously we can get podcasts at any time of the day, right? It doesn't matter whether, once they've been broadcast, you can go hear it anywhere you want to hear it. It's the idea that if I love listening to these two favorite guys that do the morning show, I can listen to them at 11 o'clock instead of when they broadcast at 9 o'clock, but not through the radio because that's a constant stream of broadcast, but through some other mechanism that could broadcast that back to me in the car while I'm in the car.
Correct. So every major auto manufacturer is enabling Alexa and Google in your car this year. So and this is not just us. We're not making this stuff up. The way that you're going to interact with what would be a radio program or a podcast is very likely going to come through Google or Alexa or the open source
on your
version.
phone or whatever.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's embedded in the car. You can actually do this now.
Streaming from your car if you have a fancy car.
Yeah, but you can actually do this now off of your phone. And the current devices that are plugging into your cigarette lighter run through your phone.
No, I get that. I mean, I listen to podcasts from my phone in my car, but I'm just the radio is being broadcast. I'm not going to be able to hear that till later, but you're quickly getting that recorded in some database that's parsed so that I can say to my phone, I want to listen to this the marketplace from NPR now.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. I feel like I'm not getting your message very clearly, and I'm trying to re-articulate.
No, that's great.
I'm going to exercise moderator privilege and say, I think Susan's question and confusion is shared by many people. And I will condense the ask in this form. You're doing a lot of high-level talk. Give us an example. Ian, you're sitting in a car. Right now, you can say, hey phone, play the Razorback report, and our product will handle that.
Yep.
Or you can also, going forward, starting 2019, most manufacturers are doing this, you can simply say, hey Ford, play the Razorback report. We do that. That's what we do.
Yes.
Like, bake it down into to Rick's question, like, how does the user interact with this? You're doing lots of high level, like AWS for parsing, like, okay, great, that's how, but what? What are we talking about?
Right.
So is that a fair
Exactly.
characterization?
Yeah, and I think one of the things I was going to say actually in the end was, it would be great if you're showing you have 3D radio stations that are using this, and I'd love to hear how you're selling them, because listening to you, I'd be sitting there in my radio station chair going, what are you selling me and why am I paying for this? So if you can boil down your sales pitch to say, here's how we get a radio station to buy our service, because it wasn't clear what their benefit was that they were getting.
Any presentation.
Awesome.
Great.
So I think there's further confusion here because broadcast radio is dead. All of the content that is produced in broadcast radio isn't produced, virtually none of it's produced live. Virtually all of it is available online. So they're hanging on to an old model of broadcasting over radio waves, but you're not going to deal with anything broadcasting over radio waves. So really what you're talking about is access to content and using a voice interface instead of a mouse, keyboard,
Dial under.
whatever, right? And I think that you might want to start out and make that clear, because that is a much, much more powerful message than I'm doing something for radio, which is a dead medium. Radio is just content. Radio is just a way to deliver the content. That method of delivery is gone. And then there's another piece to this that kind of confuses me. So I'm Rick Brennan. I'm multiple startups and investor. And my last company, we built a cognitive control system for a military unmanned aircraft. In that process, we got involved with SRI and got deep into voice technology, because one of the things we had to do was allow a fighter jet to control this other airplane. And if you know anything about fighter jets, your hands are kind of occupied. So hopefully, we looked at a number of different technologies. Voice was one of them. And we learned very quickly that there are two major modes for a voice interface. One is one that you really don't care about the outcome, which is Alexa or Google or whatever it is. Sometimes she gives you funny results because she misunderstands what you say. And that's no big deal. And that's mostly what you're talking about. As soon as you start moving into cars or into other places where there are ramifications for misunderstanding, it's a different type of voice interface. And that voice interface is measured by how accurately the device interprets what you say, because there could be safety concerns involved. So one of the things that the Alexas and the Google, that they're leaving wide open is this enormous playing field of control and saying, I want to go someplace, or I want to do this, and then you intersect that with self-driving cars, and you can start to see where voice needs to develop. Have you considered the whole voice interface environment, because you're starting to play with it, and where the most value would be? Because I think you're playing in an area where Google and Alexa are going to take, and Apple are going to take it's kind of funny that they misinterpret the interface side, because there are no legal ramifications for that. And the other side is going to be pretty wide open and really wide. Have you thought about the bigger picture of voice interface?
In terms of developing voice interface, or
Where you play, right? So you're playing with the technology now. It's what problem do you solve? Because the problem that you're articulating, I don't know, maybe it's important. It's not important to me.
So why this is important to a radio station owner, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, the radio's dead. Because the radio is transforming. If you think about local content, okay? So I don't know what the radio station here is in Boulder. I haven't hit them up yet.
I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah.
Which is
So, which is kind of my point. So,
across the country, there's 11,000 radio stations. The consolidation of those happened up to a point. About 20% of them consolidated. iHeartRadio just announced bankruptcy yesterday. Cumulus is coming out of bankruptcy. As a model, they have not been able to compete with other types of content because of the problem that they literally had no ability to understand data. There's no connection to the customer other than the fact if you call in and, and try to win a coupon to a restaurant or something like that. So the reason why radio stations, and this was from, we had presence at the National Association of Broadcasters. The reason why, it was 2 weeks ago in Vegas, the reason why this is so important to them is they understand that they've really screwed up. They stayed analog in a digital world and didn't change their model and are now attempting to competitively take their content, which is typically the ones that are going to win are the hyper-local content, and push it out on new channels. Because of what is happening with the 40-minute, they completely lost the home, right? So if I'm in my car and I'm listening to something that's local content and I get out of my car and walk into my home, I lose it, right? I sit out in the car. If it was interesting, I'd sit out in the car until it ended because I knew I couldn't do it. Because of these 40 million devices and growing, they can now step into the home and they're capturing the home back. Radio is going up on the usage side, right?
It's not radio.
So it's live streaming of content.
That's different.
It's not broad. Yes.
I think let's move off of this, but Rick has a good point, which is semantically speaking,
That's very
you might
true.
be confusing people in the audience who talk about radio, and it might be helpful if you said,
Yeah.
radio stations currently
Yes.
have this huge problem stopping to be radio stations and becoming digital broadcasters.
Correct.
This enables that.
Yes.
Like that I think addresses
Okay.
Rick's semantic point, which I think is valid.
Okay.
But anyway, Susie.
I'm Susie, nurse practitioner in the healthcare startup space. There was a little bit of discussion over something that's the most interesting piece of what I think that you do that is unrelated to radio and content delivery. So from my understanding, your company or software or whatever it is can take something that is voice, right, to text, and not only do that, but then categorize it and tag it, which to me, that ability is profound and amazing. So me, as a nurse practitioner, I could be like, hey, I am delivering a history and physical at the bedside, and this device is receiving that information, tagging it and putting it in a chart, saying this is part of the history, this is what the ears look like, this is my diagnosis and my plan, and there goes 2/3 of my workday is now obliterated.
And
1 million cups videos. I wrote big. No, really, I wrote big on my notebook.
Yeah.
Why can't you do this for me?
Yeah.
If I can take the video,
Absolutely.
upload it to your system, and now there's a thing. If anyone was here
That's
last
the
week,
piece of your
parse that.
technology that is key. It has nothing to do with radio. It has to do with
Again, that goes back to the time, the time savings, right? So that is what we're doing here is saving 2/3 of your day. Yeah, medical is with HIPAA and with some of the things there. Medical is just a little bit down the road for us, but we are. I can give you a use case there that we are working on with nursing homes right now, and it's the same thing. It's nurses. What do nurses do all day long in a nursing home? They answer the phone calls of the daughter or the son about how mom or dad is, and it's a time suck, huge time suck at the nursing station. Another application is just not as far along as we are with our product market fit here, with our initial MVP here is to take, and we dubbed it House Granny, is to take the data that comes out of when they go into the room and do the diagnostic assessment in the morning and the afternoons, and make that data available through these devices. So you can literally ask House Granny, and you set up a rules-based engine that allows you to then, as my parents are in their 80s, and it allows me to know that if my mom's in a nursing home, if she looked pale, but she ate her food and she didn't fall down, I'm happy. If she had a slip fall or something like that, I want to know, and I can ask the device, I can push it to a phone, and so it's the same. I completely agree with you that healthcare is a big area. It's just a little farther down the road with the way these devices work today.
Okay, let's keep it moving.
Let's go.
Steve?
Hi, Steve Melville, software architect, startup owner. So I'm hearing just several different, widely different value propositions. So, and part of this confusion, a simple picture can help a lot. But I assume that when you were talking about feedback loops and voice, you were talking about the user's voice, right? It was only much later and did it come out that, no, you're talking about the content voice, right? That streaming has nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, with Alexa or Google or anything else, right? You're basically indexing content. And that content may come from broadcast radio providers, it could come from podcasts or any other videos, right? Any content, right?
Yes.
That's a huge value proposition to index content, audio content, basically, so that you can get finer grained access, right?
Yes.
To me, that has nothing to do with feedback, so I'm totally confused about the feedback piece, right? When I hear this feedback to the locals, what's the value proposition to local broadcasters? And I'll grant your point about hyperlocal content has value, but you're bringing time shifting to them, which I didn't hear you mention at all, but I think that's a big value, that they're getting, plus maybe that continuous play, right? Device independent. The stream I'm listening to continues where it follows me where I go. Right? So those are, again, if that's really what you're going after, that feels like if you're going to craft a value proposition to them, that needs to be part of that story. The whole feedback thing, I still haven't understood what that's about, other than if you've indexed content, then the user gestures expressed, say, via voice, to select content can be feedback to say which parts of your content are getting listened to the most, by what type of person or something like that. Is that I'm guessing because I haven't heard you say anything about what that value proposition is.
I just kind of a quick concise.
Sure. I obviously guessed wrong in terms of radio as an example that it would be easy. So this right here is what the feedback is for. Radio stations are not on a level playing field with
How
pretty much any other content. So what we do is when someone interacts through a voice device and with indexed content, and it can be ultimately, just over the internet, it doesn't have to necessarily be controlled by voice. But to your point,
Concise.
so what we're giving them is the analysis they've never had about what their customer does and why, and who they are.
With respect to how they interact with their content?
Correct, with respect
Or are you capturing whole profiles of this is other content from other providers? Or
So
wide is this?
right now, the way that we have built this platform, it's the control of their own content. However, there's an authentication that ties it over to Facebook as an authentication mechanism that basically pulls that data in, and that's the next phase down. So then at that point, we get everybody else's content too.
Tell the story, and I'm going to put it in your words because I think this is answering. Guy or girl from Boulder has a Facebook account, they've signed into our system. We know who they are. They say, play the Razorback report. We tell the producer of the Razorback report, a person like this just asked for a report 500 times a day, that's what happened. That's the data we give them. Story over.
It's
right. Is that accurate?
It allows us to set up automated ways based upon who that person is and where they are to load in additional content to that user. So it's not just
Targeted
analysis.
ads.
Yeah, targeted ads.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Your answers are way too complex. Just
All right.
articulation. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Condense it.
Yeah.
The answer there, I think, should have been, we tell the radio station who's searching for what when. We then give the radio station the ability to sideload content to the deliverable back to the person who requested it so that they get the Razorback report that they wanted, buzz the student who they are, where they are, we take that Facebook data, and we send them an ad for a thing that we think they're gonna buy.
Yes, and to add to that, it goes back to the control. Yes, that is it, but it goes back to your point, to your question, it goes back to the control. They are controlling that, so that's not Facebook controlling that.
The radio station can
Radio
plug its
station.
own ads.
Correct,
Great.
correct.
Yeah, you're focusing on the concepts that are on your deck, and you're trying to take people's questions and answers and like answer them in a, that's a control of data thing.
Mhm.
You're having a disconnect there. I think like, try to just explain it in a, here's how it actually works. This is what a radio station dude at a computer sees. This is what a user asking Alexa gets. And try to parse it in that, I think, simple, because I think there's a lot of confusion. Very good.
Yeah, I think you're mixing your product description with your value proposition, with your enabling technology, and you're trying to put everything in a single package, and it makes it very confusing. I also think that you don't have very clear what your customer and your user are, like, when you explain it, it's not very clear what's your user and what's your customer, and they are very different, right? And then what you're selling is data analytics, and you eventually are going to be selling databases and these label databases, right? That's your product. It's enabled by the voice control and the voice technologies, right? But that's not your product, and I think a lot of people were thinking that that was your product. I don't know if that's the case.
Kelly?
Yeah, answers need to be succinct, practice in the mirror for like an hour to get them tight.
Okay.
My experience with you is you're putting a bunch of stuff in here now, lots. I don't know what you, it's a value proposition, it's the thing you're solving to get it. I hearken, thumbs up what you were saying about who's house jams. For any product, you're going to have win-wins. Otherwise, people aren't going to play. But if I'm sitting here and I still don't really understand as a listener why I want to have ads targeted better to me, that's going to be a problem. Who's your competitor? Have you done competitor analysis?
Yeah, we've got a company out of DC called XApp, which is
what exactly?
they are particularly, they're specifically in the radio space. So we do have one. They're basically the one competitor that we have out there for a while. In the healthcare space, you're going to know this from an AI standpoint. It's so early in the game right now with the way that machine learning is going to impact what healthcare does that we don't have enough data yet to collectively as a voice industry to determine exactly what is going to work in healthcare. So the companies are in R&D mode.
But I already know about 5 different businesses who do exactly what you're trying to do in healthcare. They've been out there for 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
10 or 12.
So it comes back to your value proposition. I don't think you can be everything to everybody. Pick one.
Yeah.
Do the Seth Godin approach.
Yeah.
We're just going to change radio.
Yeah.
Yes, that's probably not a lucrative place to continue to plant your seeds, but to be everywhere, training your data is a huge effort. I mean, I know that, but just focusing on workplace interactions. And then you can get very specific on types of meetings. Is it brainstorm meetings or problem solving? What's different languages coming in and out of that? So I don't know how you're going to meet all these markets. Last thing I'll say is maybe you consider not having a case study up there.
Okay.
Because everybody's focusing a lot on what are you focusing on radio, who are you, what's radio, what's this about? And you keep pulling us back saying it's not about radio. But you just showed us a case study about radio, so of course we're responding to that.
Yeah.
But I hear you saying we have grander ambitions. I think people are saying don't have grander ambitions. Get very, very good at one thing, one market, probably. But also maybe get rid of this because it's not helpful. I think it's distracting everybody.
Okay.
Just what is it about? And less of a case study.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Makes sense. Winston.
So, converting voice to text is no longer so challenging, right? So it's really what you're going to be really selling is your models and your data analytics.